Thank you, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, it really is a privilege to welcome one of the most influential figures in global music and entertainment, Harvey Goldsmith.
Thank you.
For over 5 decades, Harvey has shaped cultural history from bringing icons like Pink Floyd, Pavarotti and Bowie to the world's greatest stages, to producing landmark events such as Live Aid, now marking its 40th anniversary, and Live 8. Harvey transformed London's Wembley Stadium into a stage for history and has consistently turned bold ideas into moments that have moved millions, actually billions, Harvey. Today, he will share stories and lessons from a career defined by creative risk, cultural transformation, and philanthropy. Together, we'll explore how unforgettable experiences connect people across borders, and what leaders in tourism can learn from Harvey's experiences and the impact that they've had. Please join me once more in welcoming Mr. Harvey Goldsmith. Thank you. So, Harvey, we were just treated to a performance of We Will Rock You by Queen, which of course was one of the iconic moments from Live Aid. Live Aid celebrating its 40th year. 1985, it was a big year for you.
It was a crazy year. It's very odd because one of the key things that made Live Aid work all those years ago was having a turntable stage. And here we are sitting on a turntable stage, which is actually quite a coincidence. It was a crazy year because I had so much going on at that time. In the UK, we were all made aware in the previous October on the 6 o'clock news, for the first time ever, TV pictures on the news are showing of children actually starving in Africa. And the big debate at the time was about butter mountains, fruit mountains. What do we do with all this excess food in Europe? And yet down the road, all these people were starving, which really was the precursor of how Live Aid happened. And for me, it was a crazy year to start with because I started off by, I had Bruce Springsteen and I was going to put him on for 6 nights at the biggest space in the UK called Earl's Court, which no longer exists, thank goodness, but anyway, it did at the time. I was looking after the interests of Roger Waters, who'd split from the Pink Floyd and was starting his solo career. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from a group called Wham, which is a very important George Michael English pop group, from their manager, and the conversation went like this. Hello, it's Simon here. Hello, Simon, how are you? He said, I've arranged for Wham to go to China, and we're going to do 2 concerts in Hong Kong before that, but I can't go to China, so I want you to take them, and put the phone down. And I'm going, hello? What? So I'm now taking Wham to China, which was really delving into the unknown. It was the first time a Western pop group had ever been to China. I've got Bruce Springsteen, whose management then decided, because he'd never wanted to play open air, that he wanted to play an open air show instead of indoors. So I'm saddled with 6 nights at Earl's Court, which cost me £500,000 that I had to pay for up front. Stuck with it, and now Bruce Springsteen wants to play Wembley Stadium. So as much as I tried to persuade him otherwise, I couldn't. And Wham in China's happening, Roger Waters launching his solo career in New York at Radio City, and Bob Geldof is banging my door down saying, you've got to do this concert to help this famine situation in Africa. And I basically said to him, I'm going to China. I don't actually know if I'm coming back because I have no idea what's going to happen till I get there. If I get back in time, then yes, of course, I'll help and we want to do it. And that's really why the whole myth of Live Aid at the time took 10.5 weeks, because that's when I got back and that's all there was. So we had to put it together then. So it was a pretty crazy year, that's for sure.
That's incredible. Harvey, there are many promoters all around the world putting on shows. You're very different. You know, growing up in the UK, whether or not I was in music, I knew your name. Everybody knows your name. You're a household name. And I'd like to think that's because you are different from promoters who are generally in the background in our sector. Because for me, you lead with vision. And I wonder whether you can talk a little bit about how you see shows, how you put them together conceptually, and that difference between promoting a show and pursuing a vision.
Being a Londoner, I've always been passionate about London. And I've always felt that entertainment, good entertainment, is a fantastic promoter for a city if it's done right. And so I've been very lucky and privileged to have the opportunity to present the best of the best in London and use timing and opportunity to actually promote London at the same time. So I sat on the board of the London Tourist Board, which then became Visit London and is now London and Partners. And I helped push, because I felt it was important to have a mayor of London, because London's broken up into lots of boroughs, as they're called, or different areas. And I felt it was really important to have a central figure that represented London. And alongside that, entertainment, which then promoted tourism and promoted really business to London, went in parallel. And when the first mayor came about, his name was Ken Livingstone, he was given 5 portfolios. And most of them were really tough, and they are tough today. One was dealing with the police, which is the Metropolitan Police, one was dealing with TfL, which is transport in London, one was the main roads of London and keeping the boroughs together. And hospitality and entertainment was way down on his agenda, till a group of us came together and put a report together and showed the new incumbent mayor that actually the value of hospitality and entertainment to London alone was worth £8 billion a year. In which case he woke up and said, "What do I have to do?" And I said, "All you have to do is smile, go round the world, promote London at its best, invite people to come, be open about opportunities in entertainment and hospitality, and make London a fantastic city." And he said, "What's the downside?" I said, "You have to go to a lot of lunches and dinners. That's it. That's your downside." And of course, you know, that became very important, and it's still very important. So for any city, and the work that I've seen that's being done in Riyadh now, for example, and in other main cities in the kingdom, is along those lines. And it's very important because the parallel of bringing visitors and business to a country or to a city runs with whatever else you can offer, which is the history and the culture, of course, but also what you can do with hospitality and entertainment.
That's very true. We talk a lot in the industry about trying to hide the wiring and make the external face feel seamless, feel integrated, where we know there are a lot of complex, interrelating stakeholders behind the scenes. In your career, you've worked in both scenarios. You know, in London itself, you've worked before that coordination was in place and since. How was it? I mean, one of your iconic shows, I think, was Pavarotti in the Park, and that predated those sorts of structures that you've described. What are the kind of issues that you faced without those structures in place?
Well, again, ironically, one of the outcomes of 1985 was my problem of having spent £500,000, which I couldn't get back, of booking Earl's Court, and what could I put on there? And somebody in the office said, "Have you ever heard of the tenor Pavarotti?" And I said, "Yes, of course." He said, "Well, he's just played his first arena show." I said, "Well, let's try and get him." Little did I know, of course, that in the classical world, opera stars of that nature are taking bookings 2 years ahead, let alone, you know, next month and so on. And so I finally met with Pavarotti the following year when I persuaded his manager to come over, and we actually performed at Wembley Arena. But the date he gave me was in August, which in England is a nightmare. I mean, it's pretty hot here and people go away, but in England it's summer holidays, rain or shine, and people go away. But nevertheless, people flock to see the concert, and we struck up a lifelong relationship, and I worked with him right the way through till he passed. And then his manager at the time came to me and said, it's Pavarotti's 30th anniversary of performing, what can we do? And I came up with the idea of performing a concert in Hyde Park, and we had just had a really bad problem. We had really bad winds the previous October, and they had destroyed thousands of trees, particularly in the park, in the Royal Parks in London. So I went to the Crown Estate and I said, look, we would like to put on a concert in Hyde Park, and we will use some of the money to restore the trees, which kind of woke them up a bit because they didn't quite like the idea of having concerts back in the park. And so what I did was I was concerned about noise because Hyde Park is bounded by two main arterial roads, one being Park Lane. So I sent somebody out to read all of the noise levels of traffic every day for a week, and it transpired that the quietest day of the week was not Sunday, which what everybody expected in London. It happened to be on a Tuesday. So I said, okay, we'll do the concert on Tuesday. And then we were doing this, in essence, as a free concert, so we knew we were going to have a lot of people. So I then thought, well, we have very fixed, limited hours. When it's the curfew time, it's a curfew time. So I went to the police and I said to the police, look, we're going to have a lot of people. I don't know how many. I've got a limit of 250,000, I think it was. And the easiest way to get people out at the end of the show so they can get home is, could you please close Park Lane for about 15 minutes and we can open up all the gates and let people out and they'll scatter. And they said, no, we're not closing Park Lane. And I said, well, it would really make sense because otherwise you're going to have a problem with pedestrians crossing the road at the same time as traffic trying to get home and so on and so forth. It's going to be a big problem. And I had a real fight with the police, and in the end I had to go to the government and the Crown Estate and really lean on the police, who finally acquiesced. And funnily enough, we ended up, it rained the whole day. It became an iconic concert because it didn't stop raining from 10 o'clock in the morning till midnight, and we still had 125,000 people going, including the Prince of Wales, Princess Diana, most of the cabinet, and so on and so forth. So it became a very iconic concert, and sure enough, we made them close the roads, and 15 minutes later, everyone had gone. So it's important for when you have these big events for cities to actually interact with the presenter of those events to make sure that not only do they think about what's going on at the concert, but also the pathways to make sure that it works smoothly. Because at the end of the day, what I call soup to nuts, the experience for the audience is from the minute they bought their ticket, and buying a ticket is another mystery which needs to be unpacked and unsolved in new cities, to all the way through to what happens when you're leaving your house. Is there going to be a traffic jam, or has the nanny not turned up, so you've got to find someone to look after your kids at the last minute, to getting to the concert, to not being harassed too much by security, to getting into the show, finally getting to your seats. It often takes 2 or 3 numbers of a concert where the artist gets confused because the audience are just trying to settle down. And the magic is creating the pathway where the audience can feel comfortable and ready to go as soon as those artists get on stage.
That's amazing. And Harvey, it's very interesting to listen to you because the clarity of your attention to detail is very, very evident. And it just shows how, for a successful event to run, a promoter has to be across absolutely every aspect in the minutiae.
Yeah.
Is that something how have you been able to do that? How have you sort of...
Well, for me, when I present a concert or an event, I spend more time out front from the audience's point of view than I do backstage. Most presenters, promoters, unfortunately, don't even see the audience. They're more concerned about protecting the artist. As far as I'm concerned, if I've done my job properly, the artist is taken care of. But what's important is to make sure that the audience are having the full experience and there's nothing going wrong there. That's really important. And that's what makes the event work. And so you've got to have confidence. And two things in my life that I learned. One is always accept the challenge. And there's no such thing as no. You just got to keep pushing with confidence.
Absolutely. You've put on so many iconic events in so many iconic locations, and obviously this conference is really thinking about and reflecting on growing destinations, growing new tourism, how culture drives tourism. One of the things I'd love to hear your thoughts on is how you've galvanized purpose into action. A lot of your events seem to be purpose-driven, whether it's Live Aid and the starving children in Africa, or whether it's the Pavarotti example, his 30th anniversary. There's a strong purpose driving iconic, lots of people to action. Can you talk us through that? Talk to us about how you galvanize purpose into action and what we could learn from that, whether it's here in Riyadh or elsewhere in the world, where people are using culture, entertainment, events to drive sustainable tourism.
To me, nothing relies on one person. You have to have a team, and you have to have the best of the best. And you have to be rigid if people aren't living up to expectation, because that's really, really important. You cannot run event, well, I certainly couldn't run events and the number of events that I've done in my life without having the best production and associated team alongside it. Because to me, if I'm doing a festival, for example, I know this sounds a bit crude, but to me, the benchmark of a festival is the cleanliness of the toilets. And I go around and inspect them. Because if the toilets are clean and people are using them and they feel comfortable, everything else is going to work. So it's really important to find and train the right people to do the right job. And you cannot have people who when they're given a job that they don't understand or they don't like, who think, oh, I'm not sure what to do, I'll put it in the cupboard and I'll bring it out later. Because once it gets in the cupboard and they don't deal with it, it becomes an issue, then it becomes a problem, and then it becomes a nightmare. So the key is to really make sure that everybody, from the lowest person involved in the operation, knows what they're doing, understands what they're doing, and runs with it.
Harvey, you've been doing this for 50 years, as we've said. And this is not easy work. This is hard graft.
Yeah.
What gets you up in the morning? What is it? Is it the getting away with it? Is it achieving the impossible? Is it the music? What is it that really drives you?
I love music. I've always loved music. And I love the excitement of finding a new artist, a new band that I think I could do something with. So I have to like the music to get involved with it. And also, I need to be able to have a rapport with the artists themselves, because I think that's really important, because on that basis, you can understand what their aspirations are, what they want, and how they want to move forward. And so once you can, if you like the music and you understand what they want, then I can find the pathway of where to go with them. But I think, just going back, having that great team alongside me makes my life easier, and also I can then deliver the best possible for artists. And artists throw me challenges. I mean, in 1976, I promoted Elton John at Wembley Arena, and he suddenly, at the end of the concert, before he did an encore, went on stage and said, I'm retiring, and left the room. He went home. And we're all sitting there, 11,000 people in the audience, he's gone. And I couldn't understand what was going on. And for 2 years, he retired. And then he called me up one day and said, can we have lunch? And I said, okay. And he said, I've just finished a record and I've promised the record company I'd do a show for them. What do I do? I said, well, you're going to have to put the band together, whatever, but you're going to have to rehearse. So if you want me to organise the rehearsals for you, we'll do it. I said, by the way, are they paying you? He said, the record company, don't be ridiculous. Of course they're not paying me. So I said, well, it's going to cost you a lot of money if you're starting from scratch. You haven't worked for 2 years. So he said, his first comment was, I'm not going on the road. I said, okay, then you're going to cost you a lot of money. And he said, I don't want to play the same places I've played all those years. I hate them. I said, well, would you like to go somewhere different? And he just shouted at me. He said, okay, I'll go to Russia. And I said, sorry? He said, I'll go to Russia. I said, okay, we'll go to Russia. And he said, I want to play in Egypt. I said, okay, we'll go to Egypt. And he said, I want to play in Israel. So I said, you want to go to Egypt, Russia, and Israel? Not easy, but okay. So I left the lunch. His manager then called me up and said, what did Elton say? I just said, he doesn't want to go on the road. He doesn't want to play all the normal venues that most artists perform at, but he wants to go to Russia, Egypt, and Israel all at once. And he said, so I he started laughing. I said, and then he'll do the concert for the record company. So I thought to myself, this is insane. So I called up the British Foreign Office and I said, what do I have to do to take a pop artist to Russia? And again, it's all about luck and timing. Unbeknownst to me, the Foreign Office were negotiating a cultural exchange between the Russian Ministry of Culture and the British Ministry of Culture, and they were talking about taking the Royal Opera House and the Royal Ballet and I think the Halle Orchestra over to Russia to exchange for the Kirov and the Bolshoi back in England. And they said, who do you want to take to Russia? And I said, Elton John. And they went very quiet. And then they came back to me and they said, we'll put it on the agenda. So the next thing I know, I get invited to a lunch at Lancaster House, which is with the Foreign Office, our Ministry of Culture, and the Ministry of Culture for Russia. And the Ministry of Culture stood up, and he didn't speak much English, but he had a translator, and he said, we are delighted that we had the Kirov and the Bolshoi coming to England, and we are equally thrilled that the Royal Opera House and the Royal Ballet are coming to play in Russia, and we would like to have a popular concert. And I'm sitting at the back of the room, literally next to the toilet at the back of the room. I have no idea what is going on here. And suddenly, 3 people come up to me from the Foreign Office with a bottle of champagne and said, you've won. Elton John's going to Russia. I said, what happened? So that started the pathway. And I took the first Western pop group to Russia, which really was quite incredible. But artists do ask for difficult things, and sometimes rising to the challenge is the fun of it.
Amazing, amazing. Harvey, in our last...
And we played in Egypt as well.
Oh, you did Egypt?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And we went to Israel as well, which wasn't easy either. So we did all 3, and then he went on tour. So from that point of onwards, he hasn't stopped working. In fact, he's retired about 6 times, and he's still performing.
Yeah.
So that was what got him going, which is interesting.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. In our last sort of minute or two, I wanted to just finish on perhaps your reflections here in Riyadh. I know that it's not your first time to the kingdom. You've been coming here for some years, and you've seen really the development of the culture sector here from the early steps. I'd love to hear how you feel things are going, where you feel we've got to. What are the next steps as you see them?
This country is changing daily, and I think the targets and the goals, from what I understand, have been set up are quite amazing to transform this country. It's a very young country, and so young people want to have more say, they want to have more opportunity, they want to have their own style of culture, their own forms of entertainment. What you see that's going on nearby in Diriyah, what's going on at the Boulevard, or what's going on in other cities around the kingdom is quite extraordinary. And I commend the way that it's being done from what I've seen from a distance. And I've spent some time working with Jerry Inzarello, who I've known for 40 years, in styling what he was doing at Diriyah Gate. I think that's amazing what's going on there. I think it's just an incredible opportunity, but to grow well and hopefully learn all the lessons of what not to do, and hopefully stick to the things that you should be doing. And I think as an entertainment and hospitality go in parallel, because obviously one of the goals of the kingdom is to start to attract more and more tourists, one of the reasons for this conference, for example. And I think it's very important, and I think that what will happen is, as it grows, as it develops, there will be mistakes made, because there are always mistakes made, but learn from those mistakes and enjoy the rise through, because it's going to become very successful here.
Amazing. Harvey, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been incredible to listen to just a few gems from the journey of your 50-year career, some iconic moments, some really incredible things that I think we can learn a lot from. It's wonderful to hear your words about how things are developing here in the kingdom, the leapfrog opportunity that we're looking for to learn the lessons of mature markets, take this opportunity of a blank sheet of paper to do it better, do it in a new way, and do it in a way that really fits the culture and the hospitality of the kingdom here in Saudi Arabia.
And I look forward to coming back again, and if I can help structure or advise on what they're going on, it's real opportunity here. I think it's amazing.
Amazing. So if you would, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Harvey Goldsmith for being with us today.
Thank you.